Elon Musk warned of near-term weakness for the EV maker as the company focuses its efforts on upscaling autonomous ventures.
We're in this like weird transition period where we will lose a lot of incentives in the U.S. On the other hand, autonomy is most advanced and most available from a regulatory standpoint in the U.S. I mean, does that mean like we could have a few rough quarters? Yeah, we probably could have a few rough quarters. I'm not saying we will, but we could.
So what does that cautious tone mean for investors? Joining me now, longtime Tesla bull, Dan Ives, Wedbush Securities Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research.
Great
Dan,
to be here.
Great to see you. Yeah. So I gotta ask you, when the CEO of the company is saying something like that, is Tesla dead money for the next year? Like, should investors even bother to get in here?
Look, in my opinion, this is a company entering a golden age. Because when I think about the future, it's about AI, autonomous, robotics. Now look, was this a quarter that you're going to frame, on a wall? No. The next few quarters, could it be soft from a delivery perspective? Of course, and Musk hit that. But to me, it's about robotaxis. It's about physical AI.
Well, it might be about all of those things, but it's not all about those things now.
Sure.
It's not going to be about it next quarter or the quarter after that or the quarter. I mean, like, when is it going to be about all that stuff?
Go back to 22, like when Jensen's wearing the black leather jacket and you're talking about AI in 2022, the haters, right, all in hibernation mode, they all come out, and then think about AI, 23, and the rest is history. My view is that we are in a fourth industrial revolution. And I think that's why for Tesla, it's not about deliveries. Now look, I think deliveries does rebound a bit in the second half, but it's all about 25, 30 robotaxi in cities over the next year. It's about what I view as robotics in terms of Optum. And look, I think the autonomous valuation alone is $1 trillion.
But here's the thing, Dan. You and I have been talking about Tesla for a while. And I gotta be honest, you always say the same thing about Tesla, no matter what the company itself says.
Sure.
Like Elon could do anything. Well, you've pushed
I did
back.
criticize.
You have criticized. Okay, to be fair, yes, but that more had to do with politics than like.
Sure.
But what's happening right now is not great for the company.
I agree that it's not great in terms of near-term fundamentals. I mean, you've talked about, and that's 100% true. And I could see like some investors selling the stock. They feel like the next 1-2 quarters, nothing's going to be great. But to me, this is just the beginning of what's going to be an autonomous future and AI future. And I think we will look back, me and you, 6 months, 12 months from now. You already might have been a robotaxi in New York City.
I have not.
No,
not
I'm
yet.
saying, but you might 6-12 months.
Yes.
And we will sit here.
I'd be more likely to be in a Waymo than a Tesla robotaxi, though, Dan.
So let's see. Because I believe Waymos are basically breadcrumbs relative to what the robotaxi opportunity is going to be for Tesla. But I'm just saying, 6-12 months now, we look back in this period. This was a golden buying opportunity. I believe this is a $2 trillion market cap, but I get it. Look, they've hated Tesla the whole way through. Any issue like this transitional period going from EV to AI,
right.
I get the sell-off.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Even if we agree, we're preparing for an autonomous future, we're preparing for an AI future, even if we agree on that, why are you so convinced that it is Tesla that is going to be such a big winner? Because it is a very competitive field out there. Any part of this you're talking about, whether you're talking about AI, whether you're talking about autonomous, whether you're talking about robots, any of it, there's a lot of other very smart people and companies working on all of it.
And it's a great point. I mean, look, my view is that first, when it comes to autonomous and it comes to like what they're building, I believe Tesla will essentially own the autonomous market. But it's also the view like Optimus, robotics, as that scales, humanoids, that's going to be a huge piece of the Tesla story. And then ultimately, I think by November, Tesla will take a big stake and it will get voted on in XAI. So my view is that this is going to be, when it comes to physical AI, one of the key players, along with NVIDIA, and of course, other big tech companies, Microsoft, Meta, and everyone else is going to play. But it's a fourth industrial revolution. And I think viewing Tesla just as a car company, it's saying Scheffler is just a golfer. It's saying, LeBron's just a basketball player. I view this much different in terms of where this all heads.
You mentioned November as being another catalyst. There's something else happening in November, and that's the midterm elections, right? And as you alluded to before, sort of one of the things that you have pushed back against is Musk's involvement in politics. He says he's starting a political party, right? So is that going to be another challenge, another distraction for him?
Yeah, but since that July 4th, whatever, over a barbecue when he put that out, he really hasn't talked about it. And look, and we push back at it because my view is that you need a wartime CEO, just like what you see with Zuckerberg and Meta. And that's essentially what we see Musk starting to do. I continue to think the biggest asset for Tesla is Musk. So you're starting to see a different Musk driving the AI future. But even Trump, let's say last night, pushed back in terms of some of the comments, maybe from press secretary about Musk's AI ventures that some of the government wants to shy away from. But now you see Trump backtracking on that, and I think really trying to embrace Elon in his latest tweet. So my view is that Musk is going to be a part of the AI future in the US, but you cannot, from a politic perspective, that is something I view as a lose-lose situation.
Do you think that Tesla has an absentee board?
I think Tesla has a board that's had minimal backbone. People can say it's a rubber stamp board, but I do think you're now getting to a point where the board's going to have to step it up. In terms of giving Musk 25% voting, right? So I think that's important in terms of the AI initiative, especially when it comes to XAI. But then also, we've said, guardrails are just some outlines in terms of look, here's going to be a massive compensation package. And obviously the Delaware issue is still in flux. We're going to give you a massive compensation package. These are the targets, everything they talked about in the call. Okay, but you do these and the rest is history. But if you don't, as well as even some of the political stuff, that's something where I think the board needs to have a little more control.
Yeah, accountability.
It's accountability for the first time. And also this is, I think it's the most important chapter in Tesla's history, the next 12, 18 months. And that's even why Alphabet, stepping up CapEx. The point is, no one in this AI arms race could be on the outside looking in. It speaks to why we say Apple is going to need to do Perplexity. You can't be watching tech in the left lane of Ferrari going 100 miles an hour in that AI highway, being a minivan, right lane 45 miles an hour.
So let's get your reaction as a shareholder. We got the stock down about edging lowered about 0.4% in the after hours. Of course, waiting for the call. As a shareholder, Ross, giving me the instant reaction analysis. What do you make of this report?
Yeah, it's garbage. It's sad and depressing to me that this is a business in decline when it should be, it's in a growing industry, but it has great products and it should be a growing business, and it's not. And now, if you take out the regulatory credits, they're cash flow negative. They're basically cash flow break even with the regulatory credits. And the regulatory credits are going down every quarter, and they're going to be gone soon. And the prices are going up on the vehicles soon. So I'm just man, this sucks. And when you look at Cybertruck and Model S and X, sales are down 54%. For their high-end vehicles, and their newest vehicle, which was supposed to be this great truck, which I actually like, but they don't do anything to sell. And so there's no doubt in my mind that if they don't rectify the fact that it doesn't matter how many products you come up with, if people don't want to buy them, it's a problem, and they just don't seem to want to address that issue.
Now, bulls on this name, Ross. We've had financial analysts on. They got a buy on this one. You asked them to explain that outperform. In part, when I asked them about that core EV business and listen, it's EVs that are still driving the P&L here.
That's right.
They predict better days ahead, and they'll say, listen, look at that revamped Model Y and watch for, they say, that new affordable model on the way. It's better days ahead in 26 with those deliveries. What do you say to that argument?
I think that there's no doubt in my mind that Tesla needs an affordable, low-cost, small vehicle for the emerging markets and the United States if they're going to be competitive globally. This should have happened before robotaxi, and it didn't because Elon decided for it not to happen because it was more important for him to launch robotaxi. But there's no doubt in my mind, if sales are going to improve, it's going to have to come from a new model that's lower priced. And supposedly this is happening. But if it's just a small Model Y, I just don't think you add incremental sales. You're going to lose. You're going to cannibalize more of your business. So what I'm also concerned about is even if they came out with a golden car that flew, that people wouldn't buy it because it's Elon Musk's car. And until somebody wants to address that Elon's political, not just opinions, but his actual behavior in public is just super inappropriate and turns off basically everybody now. Like, at what point is anybody going to address the elephant in the room, which is Elon? And it's like, if he wants to fix the image of himself and Tesla, that will improve sales. And so maybe in a year things get better. But if he doesn't change the way he's acting, I don't see how anything gets better.
Ross, talking about Musk, listen, there were investors, and we had them on the show, an analyst, who were saying, listen, they weren't happy with his big move into politics, and they felt like, listen, he needs to get back to work full time. He needs to be focused on Tesla. Now it sounds like he is focused, he is committed. We have analysts on the street saying, listen, this is it, he's back. It's I think they use the word, it's wartime CEO now. As a shareholder, how do you feel about that? Is that gonna, is that a benefit? Is that an advantage to have a refocused Musk back in charge, back in the seat and back in charge of product?
Well, if you go backwards, this is what I've been calling for some time, that the CEO of the company should actually work at the company. And the fact that he's back is great news for Tesla, for sure. And the fact he's in wartime mode, although that sounds great, it's actually because Tesla's in a crisis. And that's actually when Elon works the best. Sadly, it takes a horrible crisis to get the best out of Elon. And so maybe we'll get that this time. I don't know how many, rabbits he can pull out of a hat, but I wouldn't bet against Elon. And I certainly have never bet against Elon in my career and would never recommend you bet against Elon. And I'm long the stock still. But it doesn't change the fact that even probably the best thing you can do is work at Tesla and never tweet again and never say anything again. And in a year, I think Tesla would be fixed. But the working at Tesla is one big portion of repairing a lot of the issues Tesla has, but it doesn't change their image problem. It doesn't change the fight with Trump that he continues to stoke that will come back to haunt him for sure. And it certainly doesn't change the fact that liberals across the world absolutely hate him and look at him as the symbol of everything that's wrong. And until he wants to address that, I still think it's going to be hard for Tesla to grow.
As a shareholder, Ross, are you interested in seeing Tesla and xAI combined? Because Musk will say, listen, this is not an EV company, this is an AI company. Would such a combination make sense to you as a shareholder?
Well, I think that's what's going to end up happening, whether I like it or not, because it's really sort of Elon's grand plan to get full control of Tesla would be to have Tesla make an all-stock offer for xAI, which he majority controls. xAI should have never been started. It should have been Tesla. It should have all been inside Tesla. So the fact they've got a $100 billion company that they build outside of Tesla just to help Elon eventually regain control of Tesla, it's just, I don't know how to call it. It is what it is. That said, I think that's what ultimately will be, unless Elon really sees the value of not being in a public company environment, which I think he does see that value. So that would be the only thing that would preclude Tesla buying xAI. But sadly, I think Tesla shareholders are going to vastly overpay for xAI, and they need the cash out of Tesla's balance sheet for xAI to grow. So I think this is going to happen, and it's just a matter of time.
I want to squeeze one last one in here, Ross. Spoke to another investor on the show. Their excitement, their enthusiasm, Ross, it's all about, for them, the robotaxi service. Do you share that enthusiasm?
Well, I don't know about you, but every time I take a Uber or a Waymo, I'm going from A to B. What is so exciting about a business that's been around for a long time? The fact that a human isn't driving and it's a robot is nice. Like, I like Waymo a lot, and Waymo's doing a great job, and I prefer it over Uber. They really have done a great job, but does this really expand the market for ride sharing? I don't see it really. And then ride sharing as a business is already super competitive between Uber, Lyft, and now Waymo. And ride sharing doesn't work in every city. So I just don't, even in the best case scenario, this is a tough business to get in and to win when you already have robotaxis on the road from a competitor like Google that has unlimited resources. And you can see the strain on the balance sheet right now with CapEx spending and free cash flow going down to basically zero and CapEx spending going higher and higher. That's what's going to happen with Tesla on the short term is CapEx spending goes up and up, but the revenue doesn't come for years. It took 8 years or something plus for Uber to be profitable. And, this is a long-term bet for Tesla and at best for a low margin business. So I'm not that excited about robotaxis. I don't see what's so great about it. I get in a Waymo, it takes me from A to B, cost me $20, big deal.
Ross, always good to see you. Always great to have you on the show. Thank you, my friend.
Alphabet posting strong results in its latest quarter, but shares have been coming off the highs. So who is best poised to outperform? Joining me now, Shay Boloor, Futurum Chief Market Strategist. Shay, thanks for being here. So the question that we sort of have been digging into is who is winning the AI race, right? So Alphabet giving us, and I guess we're going to get this information incrementally all throughout earnings season, but what did we learn through the lens of Alphabet on that front?
Yeah, I know the market likes to treat Alphabet as an AI laggard among the Mag 7, primarily because they're over-indexing the short-term ad volatility that AI is going to bring. However, they're missing the bigger shift. In the new digital economy, to become a real winner, you need to own 4 things: the data, the chips, the distribution, next-gen brain. Alphabet has all 4. They're one of the few that have all 4. And we saw Google Cloud have an inflection quarter just yesterday where it's growing top line 32%, 21% operating margin. That segment alone is worth $500 billion. Add in the YouTube side, which also exceeded expectations, growing top line 13%. A lot of people don't realize that they actually have the leading streaming hours among all competition. Netflix is at 7-8%, YouTube's at 13%. So if Netflix is a $500 billion company, begs to ask, what's YouTube worth? So those 2 segments alone, or those 3 segments alone, are going to be worth around like $1.5 trillion. We're not even talking about Waymo. So I think that the fears of AI cannibalizing their search business is overdone. Yes, it might ruffle a few feathers, something that hasn't been done in quite some time on the search business. However, it's going to evolve. And I think in that evolution, you saw it yesterday, where Google Cloud's inflecting, you're seeing Google Search still maintain $200 billion run rate. And I think that you're going to slowly but surely see that Alphabet will be a major AI winner in next coming years.
Gotcha. Okay, so you got Alphabet on the one hand, you got Tesla on the other hand, where, its bet on AI is a little more indirect right now, right? We'll have the question, I guess, put to the shareholders over whether they should invest in XAI. I guess you have some AI incorporated in Tesla vehicles, but what's the case there? Where do they fit into all of this?
It's a great question. So I think yesterday it was obviously less about what they reported and what they're actually building. And I think that there is absolutely an Elon tax in owning Tesla. However, it's worth paying because we get the front row seat for a company building the AI brain and body of mobility and robotics. And when we think about how much money is being spent on actual labor every year, it's in the trillions. So if Elon can deliver on this vision of building the neural network for mobility and robotics, we're talking, we're right now trying to argue if it should be worth 1 trillion, 1.2 trillion. It's going to be substantially higher if he conquers that.
Okay, but how big is that if at the beginning of that sentence, right? Because you're talking about a guy who has, yes, he has delivered on electric vehicles, but that's really the thing he's delivered on successfully so far. All the other stuff is still in progress and it's pushed back and deadlines are changed and the ball moves all the time. So, is it a bet on something that maybe could happen possibly? Do you know what I mean? How sure of a thing are we talking here?
I believe this is the biggest bet Elon's made in his life, cannibalizing his EV business.
Okay, it's the biggest bet he's made, but as an investor, do I want to partake in that bet?
I see what you're saying. So I think, again, like I referenced on Google, the 4 things you need to be a winner in the new digital economy, Tesla has 3 of the 4. They have the data, they have the hardware, they have the distribution, the millions of fleets of cars. the next gen brain is what they're missing. I do believe that XAI and Tesla merger is going to be inevitable, and once that happens, they have all four. But like you mentioned, the timeline is the variable in the calculus on if Tesla's a good investment. However, if you go historically, Elon has delivered. The timeline always just like iffy, and right now it's an eye-watering valuation. So it's a risk. However, if you think about the past 5 years, how much of these early disruptors have run up, have had multiple expansion? All of them almost. But Tesla is at the same stock price as you could have gone in 4 or 5 years ago. However, they're positioning themselves to be a leader in these secular growth, and that's the greatest TAM of mankind history. So that I think it's a risk and rewards there.
If you're choosing where to buy right now, I'll come back to the original question, which is who's winning the AI arms race. So we just mentioned two of them. There's a lot of other companies out there. What else where else should people be looking in terms of who's winning?
So I think it's safe to say that NVIDIA will maintain their lead as the GPU engine in the new digital economy. However, I think that even after yesterday when Google was down, it was still presenting the best risk and reward among all of the big tech players because they're still trading at 20 times earnings. But it's going outside the Mag 7, let's talk ServiceNow. I think ServiceNow had one of the best prints this cycle so far. I think they're proving that they are not just a SaaS company anymore. They are actually monetizing AI at the enterprise level. They could care less about what kind of chip and model you use. Their nirvana is making data talk, then orchestrating it to the right model, and then they're gonna have the workflow do its thing, and then it's gonna orchestrate outcomes. And I think that it's safe to say yesterday, it's proving that they're not a SaaS company, they're actually more of the control tower of AI. And knowing that kind of mindset of what company that ServiceNow is becoming, that's a massive runway. And I think we spoke to Bill this week and we spoke to their leadership team. They are going gloves are off right now on them becoming the stage 2 AI winner. Everyone talked about Palantir, rightfully so. They're converting LLMs to real world decisions. However, I do believe that ServiceNow is becoming the workflow engine of enterprise AI, and yesterday proved that the re-rating should continue.
Yeah, and those shares, we've been seeing them go up. Thank you, appreciate it.
Tesla reporting second quarter earnings on Wednesday, and CEO Elon Musk bracing investors for a bumpy road ahead on that earnings call.
We're in this like weird transition period where we will lose a lot of incentives in the US. On the other hand, autonomy is most advanced and most available from a regulatory standpoint in the US. I mean, does that mean like we could have a few rough quarters? Yeah, we probably could have a few rough quarters. I'm not saying we will, but we could.
For more, we're bringing in now Al Root, associate editor at Barron's and Yahoo Finance senior autos reporter, Pras Sumerian. Welcome, guys, to the show. Al, I will start with you. It is great to see you, of course, as always, Al. Stock under pressure. Tesla's under pressure for very good reason, Al. It makes sense. I mean, they just reported a 12% year-over-year decline in revenue. One question I know analysts are asking, Al, if I was an investor in Tesla, I would be asking, is this the bottom, Al? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is great to see me. Good to see Pras, too. Hey, Pras. It's an interesting question because the bottom in Tesla, and Pras can attest to this, I always say something to the effect of every 12 months, Tesla stock will be down 50% and like up 100%. This is just the volatility we live with. It wasn't a great quarter. This is like the 5th quarter of year-over-year earnings declines out of the last 8. Yet it still has $1 trillion market cap because of these hopes for autonomy. So is it the bottom? It's always kind of like, if Elon, expands the robotaxi business as fast as he says, and if he builds humanoid robots as fast as he says, then it's definitely the bottom. But we just sort of never know on timelines and things like this. So I would sort of subscribe to we're going to have a few rocky quarters. You're going to see typical volatility in Tesla, which means it's about 2x any other stock. And then we're just going to have to just be ready for days like this. Don't forget, last quarter was arguably worse. The stock was up 5% after that.
Pras, I want to get your thoughts as well. Let's just stick that core EV business for a second, Pras, which is, that is what's still driving the P&L here for now. On that point, Pras, I've had, bulls come on this show and say, listen, tough times now, but they see what's coming and they say, hey, listen, revamp Model Y. I got a new affordable model on the way, better times ahead, better deliveries ahead. What do you make of that argument?
First of all, hey Josh, and how you doing, Al? Hope you're doing well, man. Yeah, so basically, yeah, that EV sort of core business there. Look, I think the CFO sort of hinted at the fact that they're going to see some, a big sort of a pull through in demand till the end of Q3 when we have the EV tax credit expiring, and then there could be some really tough times ahead following that. In fact, they're going to push the launch of this new cheaper EV until after that tax credit goes away, as a way to sort of maybe boost sales once that credit goes away. But the thing is that, Musk even hinted that the new cheap EV is just a Model Y that does less features. So that's not exactly, in my opinion, something that's going to motivate a new customer to come on board and buy a Tesla. I think we all hoped or kind of wanted to see from an investor or even customer standpoint a brand new vehicle, a smaller, maybe a hatchback, but we're not going to see that. We're going to see just another Model Y or decontented Model Y. I don't know if that's enough to kind of pull a Tesla forward in terms of their current EV sales. And again, as Al was saying, it's going to be really a bet on the next 5 years of robotaxi stuff and Optimus and whether they can actually execute on that vision.
Well, fellas, I want to get Adam's thoughts on here as well, because Adam just happens to be a newly minted Tesla shareholder, just recently carved out a position in this name. How come, Adam?
Well, I think as Al said, you never really know where they're going. Is it going to be an AI company? Is it going to be a robot company? And my answer to that is yes. I think it absolutely is going to become an AI and robotics company. And that's why I bought Tesla about a month ago for the first time ever. And in fact, if you run the numbers, now granted, this is all contingent upon Elon actually being able to execute, but he's talking about having 10,000 of these Optimus humanoid robots operating in his factories by year end. 10,000. And more importantly, he thinks that he can get to a 1 million, again, we'll see, Al, if he can do it, but he thinks he can get to a 1 million a year run rate, making a million robots a year. He's going to sell them for $50,000, and at that run rate, it'll cost him $20,000 per robot. Well, that's $30,000 of profit per robot on 1 million robots, again, if he can execute, and that's way more money than he's ever made on electric vehicles. And I think that's the promise. And the other thing that he's got going for him is that the brain of that humanoid robot called Optimus is based upon all the data collected with his autonomous cars that have been driving around for years. So that's a unique advantage no one else can claim. Amazon certainly doesn't have that with their own humanoid robot. So that's why I bought Tesla. I think it's an AI and a robotics play, and I kind of have to just, hold my breath on valuation.
Al, so Adam is a believer. He's excited about those humanoid robots. We've had other investors, Al, equally excited. What do you make of that?
I mean, that's the bull case. I think that, so what will I say? I think that Tesla is clearly not only a car company. I completely agree with that. They have chips, NVIDIA chips, the chips they designed themselves. They have core AI technology. There's the XAI angle as well, which Elon runs to help the AI efforts. They have AI applications, killer AI applications with cars and robots. And they have Elon. So there's a lot going well. And then so I put on my bear hat and I say, but that stuff doesn't generate sales or revenue yet. So, we wrote a while ago that the energy storage and car business, we'll call it 200 a share, and everything else after that is sort of a bet on Elon. That seems pejorative, but it's not a bad idea to bet on Elon necessarily. But that's how I view it, right? It's a $1 trillion company, a little lower today. The low end of, the Magnificent Seven in terms of valuation. So that's sort of where it sits. If Elon is right and, AI robots are a killer app, 100, that 30,000 gross profit per robot, I mean, unbelievable, right? But then we just got to get there. Yeah. We just got to get there.
Praz, let me get your thoughts too on robotaxis, because Musk was certainly making headlines there as well. Talking big, Praz. He says, listen, we'll probably have autonomous ride hailing off to half of the population of the U.S. by the end of the year, he says. That's at least our goal, subject to regulatory approvals. What do you think of that, Praz? That's an impressive bogey if he hits it.
Yeah, this is this big bet on what Adam Jonas calls embodied AI, right? So robotaxis are, he's expanded the coverage area there in Austin. The question is, can they actually remove that safety driver, right? Can they keep expanding, adding more vehicles, remove the safety driver, have these vehicles operate on their own, as Waymo is doing right now? They talked about new U.S. cities that they're going to be operating in. There's reports that Nevada will be next for the robotaxi, and also San Francisco Bay Area, I believe, is the other area. So yeah, that's the gamble. That's the big bet. I gotta admit that they did a good job with Austin so far. Yes, there's been some hiccups with some traffic violations here and there, but the cars are operating there in that small beta test. The next big test, I think, is when are they going to open up to the public, right? When do you and I and everyone else get to use these vehicles? I think that's the next big step before they actually further expand into different U.S. cities.
And Adam, back to you.
Yeah.
As a new shareholder, I have to ask you how you feel about the Trump-Musk, the bromance, the breakup. Trump weighing in today, by the way, doesn't want to hurt Musk's business empire.
Right.
You saw this. He says, post on Truth Social, says, everyone is stating that I will destroy Elon's companies by taking away some, if not all, of the large-scale subsidies he receives from the U.S. government. This is not so, the president says. I want Elon and all businesses within our country to thrive. What do you make of it?
Of course he does. And that's exactly what he should be saying. I'm glad that they've buried the hatchet. They had a wonderful, wonderful relationship through Doge. And then somehow it went terribly foul. Eagles got in the way. But thank goodness, I think President Trump has taken a much more presidential tone. I think that's appropriate. I think that Mr. Musk has struck a somewhat contrite tone. And great, let's get over it. Let's go onwards and be profitable. Let's grow our businesses. Let's focus on what we do best. In the case of the president, it's running the country. In the case of Mr. Musk, it's running his multiple businesses, of which I am a shareholder.
Al, it's interesting because I had some bulls on this program, Al, and part of their bullishness, full stop, was the relationship between Trump and Musk. Their thinking being, listen, it is a great thing for Musk to have this good friend in the White House who can perhaps foam the runway on some of these initiatives like robotaxis.
Yeah, so the primary, you just reiterated it, or I'll just reiterate it. The primary benefit from the Trump-Musk relationship was supposed to be nationwide autonomous driving standards, which would speed the adoption of this $1 trillion valuation that Dan Ives has for instance, and others have for robotaxis. That was listen, should I have said it then? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. It was a bit euphoric, right? The idea that just a relationship between the president and Elon Musk could create, $1 trillion in value, which it basically did overnight, right? Tesla stock, I can't remember, but we're talking like 480 in December. So that was a bit euphoric. So we probably overcooked that, just like we overcooked it on the downside when we thought the world was ending. I think the Trump-Musk relationship is just sort of a risk for Tesla investors, and it kind of goes back to Musk's time, right? Is he going to stay involved in politics? Is he going to form a new political party? That's sort of like the downside risk. But if things sort of blow over and we just have to deal with like losing tax credits, then I think that, we can move on from the bromance and just sort of focus on whether they can sell cars and whether they can expand the robotaxis.
You and I talked yesterday, and you had 3 things that you were looking for. I gotta admit, we got news on one of those that surprised me, the more affordable Tesla model. But how did they meet? How did the company sort of meet what you were looking for?
Yeah, that more affordable car, Tesla then revealed that car is going to be coming into volume production in the back half of the year. So sort of confirming that the car is still happening this year. Whether we see it or not is another story, but it's going to be hitting that volume production at the end of 2025. So that part was good. Robotaxi news, not that sort of in depth. We just heard about possible expansion into new areas. They want to eventually go into California, obviously, and then but no real mention about when they're going to take away that safety driver and things like that. But they were sort of kind of coy on future expansion for that. So a few questions there. But I think the biggest question mark, Julie, is that we're talking about the business, the core auto business, right? And basically the CFO is saying that they're going to have to basically pull forward some demand here because of the expiration of that tax credit, and that might lead to a supply crimp at the end of Q3, meaning fewer sales. And when Musk was asked about the EV tax credit, he said, "quote We're in for a few rough quarters." He said, "Probably could have a few rough quarters as a result of this." And he said, "quote I'm not saying that we will, but we could." And that really kind of hit shares in the aftermarket and during the call, and now we're seeing it down 7%. So it's that core auto business that being impacted by Trump's BBB that is really hitting the stock here right now.
It is definitely hitting the stock right now. And Josh, has the faith-based story for Tesla run out of a little bit of juice here?
It feels like it, Julie, right? I mean, this is always, Tesla earnings are always kind of a story of what story Elon Musk can tell, right? It is not ever really about necessarily what the company is doing with its core auto business. I don't think most street analysts that we talk to are talking about the core auto business and that being a key driver of why they would have a price target in the 400s or the 500s on this stock, right? It is a story about what is to come tomorrow. And right now, what is coming tomorrow just feels pretty far out, right? And I think even when you think about robotaxis and you think about the competition that Pras has been covering pretty significantly, right? When you see Uber getting further into autonomous driving, of course, you have Waymo's already on the road in areas of the country. And I think you just sit back and sort of say to yourself, okay, well, when is Tesla really getting into this space? This game is happening right now, and it feels like Tesla isn't fully involved in it at this point. And then you just wonder in general, after the last several months of Musk back and forth with the government, if investors are maybe just getting a little bit sick of the Elon story here, and he's just becoming a harder voice to listen to, because there's certainly been quarters where Tesla's financials have not looked great, but he has come on the call and talked about robots and talked about the future and talked about things that are going to come in 5 to 10 years, and the stock is up, right? Right now, the stock is not up because the near-term story continues to just be challenging.
Yeah, Ali, you flagged his predictions on Optimus 3, the robot, right? And the big ambitions still for how many of those things they're going to make, but investors are not biting this time.
Yeah, it feels like Tesla is caught in the middle between the company that it is or was, which is that pure play EV powerhouse, and the company that it really wants to be, which is relying on artificial intelligence, robotaxis, robots. And like Josh was saying, that just feels very far out at this point. So investor concerns are definitely valid. Then in the near term, the part of the business that's making the money, the EV business, is slowing considerably, both in the US and abroad. We have intense competition on that front. We did have the reveal of that cheaper EV model, and I agree with you, Julie, that's something that surprised me as well. But we need that to get to market ASAP because this competition is so intense at this point. So for me, the bulls are really focused on the future, the possibility here, what Tesla could be. But I think for investors, how much patience do they have to wait to see when we start to see some monetization on that front? And according to Elon Musk, it seems like we're going to have to wait quite a while. We don't really have firm deadlines or targets here. And I think that murkiness is what's creating a lot of this jittery action in the market right now.